Living in a suburban neighborhood was supposed to be peaceful, but that illusion shattered the moment I encountered Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. I had been living in the neighborhood for a little over a year, and during that time I had managed to keep a low profile. I paid my dues, kept my yard maintained, and generally avoided HOA drama. But Karen? She had a different agenda. Karen treated the HOA not as a community organization, but as her personal fiefdom. She patrolled the neighborhood daily, clipboard in hand, like a mall cop desperate for action. If a trash can was left out 5 minutes past pickup time, she was knocking on your door. If your grass was slightly longer than regulation, expect a notice in your mailbox. And if she simply didn't like you, well, she'd find something to fine you for. The trouble started when she set her sights on my car. It wasn't some beat-up junker leaking oil onto the pavement. It was a sleek, black SUV, clean, well-maintained, and parked neatly in my driveway. But in Karen's eyes, it was a violation of her interpretation of the rules. I was coming home from work one evening when I spotted her standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed, staring at my car as if it personally offended her. She caught my eye and marched over with the righteous fury of someone who had never been told no in her life. "You can't park that here," she snapped, jabbing a perfectly manicured finger toward my vehicle. I blinked at her. "What?" "OA rules clearly state that vehicles must be parked in the garage or on the street, not in driveways overnight." I raised an eyebrow. "That's not a rule." "It's implied," she huffed, "and as the president of the HOA, I have the right to enforce it." I exhaled sharply, already regretting this conversation. "Well, I'm not moving it. It's my driveway." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line, her face twitching slightly. She was used to people bowing to her demands, and my refusal had clearly thrown her off. "Then I'll have it towed," she threatened. I let out a laugh, not taking her seriously. "Good luck with that." With that, I walked past her, unlocking my front door and shutting it behind me. I should have known she wouldn't let it go. The next morning, I stepped outside, coffee in hand, and immediately felt my stomach drop. My driveway was empty. My SUV, my government-issued SUV, was gone. For a split second, I thought it had been stolen, but no, that didn't make sense. The neighborhood was quiet, and I hadn't heard a thing overnight. My mind raced, and then it hit me. Karen. She had actually done it. She had towed my car. At first, I was just angry. Who the hell did she think she was? But then a much bigger problem dawned on me. This wasn't just any car. It belonged to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Karen hadn't just towed an illegally parked vehicle. She had stolen a government vehicle, and she had absolutely no idea what kind of trouble she had just unleashed on herself. I stood in my driveway, gripping my coffee cup so tightly my knuckles turned white. My SUV was gone. Not stolen, no. I knew exactly who was responsible. Karen had actually followed through with her ridiculous threat and had my car towed. At first, my anger flared. Who did she think she was? This wasn't some beat-up old junker sitting abandoned on the curb. This was my car, parked legally in my driveway. She had absolutely no authority to touch it. But then, the realization sank in, and my frustration turned into something much worse. My car wasn't just a personal vehicle. It was an FBI-issued SUV. It had government plates. It had equipment inside that was most definitely not meant to be handled by some random tow truck driver. And now, it was off the grid. I pulled out my phone and immediately dialed the local impound lot, pacing as the line rang. "Citywide towing and impound. How can I help you?" "My vehicle was towed last night," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Black SUV, government plates, I need to know if it's there." There was a pause, the kind that made my gut twist. Sir, we don't have any record of a tow matching that description." I stopped pacing. "What do you mean you don't have a record? My HOA called for a tow truck last night. Where would it have gone?" "I'm not sure," the man on the other end said, now sounding nervous. "We handle most HOA requests, and I don't see anything from your neighborhood in our system." That's when the full weight of the situation hit me. Karen hadn't gone through the proper channels. She hadn't called the city-approved towing service. She had hired some random tow company. My breath came faster as my mind raced. That meant there were no official records of where my vehicle had been taken. No paperwork. No way to trace it through normal city systems. My government SUV had just been stolen thanks to some entitled neighborhood busybody. I clenched my jaw and took a deep breath before making the next call. This one wasn't to another impound lot. It was to my supervisor. It rang twice before he picked up. Yeah? Sir, we have a situation, I said, my voice clipped. My vehicle was towed last night by my HOA, but it wasn't taken to a city impound. It's missing. There was a pause. Then a low sigh. You're telling me you lost a bureau vehicle? It was towed without my authorization, I corrected quickly. I think they used a private company. I don't have a record of where it is. Jesus, my supervisor muttered. All right, sit tight. We're handling this now. He hung up, and within minutes I was back outside, pacing my driveway. I had been angry before, but now I was furious. Karen had no idea what kind of mess she had just created, and by the time this was over, she was going to regret ever messing with my car. Then, as if on cue, I saw her. Karen came strolling down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, wearing her usual smug expression. She had no idea I had already escalated this. She had no idea that, this time, she had picked a fight she couldn't win. I didn't have to wait long before the cavalry arrived. Less than an hour after my call to my supervisor, 2 black SUVs rolled into the neighborhood, their tinted windows reflecting the morning sun. The moment they pulled up, I could already feel the shift in the air. The quiet, suburban street suddenly felt like the scene of an unfolding operation. The doors opened and out stepped 2 men in dark suits, FBI agents, the real deal. Agent Roberts, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a permanent scowl, led the way. His partner, Agent Miller, was shorter but just as intense, his sharp eyes scanning the neighborhood like he was already piecing everything together. They didn't waste time. Tell us everything, Robert said as he approached, his tone all business. I took a deep breath, gesturing to my empty driveway. My HOA president, Karen, decided my car was a violation of the rules and had it towed last night. I called the local impound lot, but they have no record of it. She used a private company, one that isn't on any official city list. Roberts frowned, exchanging a glance with Miller. So she hired a rogue tow truck to steal an FBI vehicle? Pretty much. Miller let out a low whistle. This just got interesting. I was about to say more when movement caught my eye. Karen was making her way down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, completely oblivious to the federal agents now standing in my driveway. Her expression was smug, like she thought she had won some ridiculous power struggle. She had no idea what she had just walked into. I see you finally took care of that vehicle issue, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Maybe now you'll follow the community guidelines properly. Before I could respond, Roberts turned to face her, pulling out his badge. Ma'am, we need to have a conversation. Karen blinked, her confident expression faltering. Excuse me? Roberts didn't give her a chance to regain her composure. You authorized the towing of a black SUV from this property last night? Karen folded her arms, lifting her chin. Yes, I did. That car was violating HOA regulations, and as president, I have the right to enforce community standards. Miller stepped forward, his tone sharp. What towing company did you use? Karen hesitated. Why does that matter? Roberts's expression darkened. Because the vehicle you had towed wasn't just some random car, it was an FBI-issued vehicle. For a moment, Karen just stared at him, clearly not understanding the gravity of the situation. That's not possible, she scoffed. It didn't have any markings. It had government plates, I cut in, my patience wearing thin. You didn't notice that? Karen's face paled slightly, but she quickly shook it off. Well, if it was a government vehicle, then it shouldn't have been parked in violation of HOA rules. Miller let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Lady, you just committed a felony. Karen's bravado cracked. A felony? Yes, Robert said bluntly. Tampering with or unlawfully removing government property. Depending on what happens next, you could be looking at serious charges. She took a step back, her eyes darting between the 2 agents. But I didn't steal it. I just had it moved. Roberts crossed his arms. Where is it now? Karen swallowed hard. I don't know. That was all I needed to hear. The situation had just gone from bad to worse. Karen stood frozen, her face going through an entire spectrum of emotions. Defiance, confusion, and then, finally, fear. She had spent so much of her life bossing people around, using her HOA title as a weapon, that she had never considered the possibility of real consequences. But now, standing in front of two very serious FBI agents, she was realizing she had just stepped into something much bigger than neighborhood disputes. I didn't steal anything, she stammered. I was just enforcing the rules. Agent Roberts exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of his nose as if he was losing patience. Ma'am, let me explain this very clearly. You arranged for the unauthorized removal of federal property. That is a crime. Where is the car? Karen fidgeted with her clipboard, suddenly looking very small. I called a tow company, she muttered. We know that, Miller said. We need the name of the company. Karen hesitated, then finally sighed. Titan Towing. I frowned. That name wasn't familiar, and I'd checked the list of city-approved tow companies earlier. Roberts must have been thinking the same thing because he immediately turned to Miller and nodded. Miller pulled out his phone and stepped away, presumably to run a check on the company. Meanwhile, Karen was shifting from foot to foot, her confidence completely gone. Look, she said, her voice suddenly much softer. I didn't know it was an FBI car. If I had, I wouldn't have. It doesn't matter, Roberts interrupted. You had no legal authority to tow anyone's car, let alone a government vehicle. Karen paled again. I thought I did. As HOA president, I have the right to enforce parking regulations. Roberts gave her a cold stare. HOA policies do not override state or federal law. You can't just take people's property because you don't like where it's parked. At that moment, Miller returned, shaking his head. Titan Towing isn't in the system, he said. No records of an active business license. No registered lot. It's a ghost company. I felt my stomach drop. A ghost company. That meant my SUV hadn't been taken to a legitimate impound lot. It was gone. Karen's mouth opened and closed, panic settling into her features. Wait, what does that mean? Roberts turned back to her, his eyes sharp. It means you didn't just hire a tow company. You hired criminals. Karen let out a nervous laugh, like shaking her head. No, that's not possible. I found their number online. They had a website and everything. Miller scrolled through his phone. Did you actually check if the website was real? Because I just pulled it up, and it looks like it was made in 5 minutes. No contact address, no physical location, no customer reviews. Karen's breathing became shallow. She was finally realizing just how deep in trouble she was. I just wanted the car moved. Well, congratulations, I said, crossing my arms, because now it's moved somewhere and we don't know where. Roberts turned back to Karen. You need to give us everything. Phone numbers, emails, the exact time you called them. If you don't cooperate, this is only going to get worse for you. Karen, now visibly trembling, nodded rapidly. Okay, I'll tell you everything. Too late for that, I thought bitterly. The damage was already done. Karen scrambled to pull out her phone, her hands shaking so badly that she nearly dropped it. Her entire demeanor had shifted. Gone was the arrogant HOA tyrant who thought she ruled the neighborhood. Now she was just a terrified woman who had made a colossal mistake, one that could land her in serious legal trouble. I called them yesterday evening, she stammered, scrolling frantically through her call history. Here, this is the number I used. She turned the phone toward Agent Roberts, who quickly jotted it down. Miller took the number and stepped away again to run a trace while Roberts continued questioning Karen. Did they give you any kind of receipt? A confirmation email? Any paperwork at all? Karen's face went blank. No, I just called them, and they said they'd send a truck. The guy sounded professional. He told me they could remove the car within an hour, and that was it. I clenched my jaw. So, you hired a company without checking their credentials? Without making sure they were actually real? Karen flinched at my tone. I didn't think it was necessary. I just wanted that car gone. I scoffed, shaking my head. Her pettiness had led to this disaster. She didn't care about rules or community standards. She just wanted to feel powerful, and now she was paying the price. Miller returned a moment later, looking grim. The number's a burner, he said. No registered business, no records, nothing. Whoever she called, they aren't a legit company. Karen's face drained of all color. Oh my God. Robert's expression hardened. That means your vehicle could be anywhere, he said, turning to me. We're officially treating this as a stolen government asset now. I exhaled sharply. This situation had gone from Karen's petty HOA nonsense to a full-scale federal case in a matter of hours. Karen, now fully panicking, clasped her hands together. I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought. Roberts cut her off. Intent doesn't matter anymore. You arranged for an unauthorized company to take a government vehicle, and now it's missing. That makes you complicit. Karen let out a strangled noise, looking like she was on the verge of tears. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Please, I didn't know. Miller narrowed his eyes. You'd better hope we find that SUV, or you're going to be facing a lot more than HOA complaints. Karen swallowed hard and nodded frantically. I'll help, I swear. Just tell me what to do. Roberts glanced at me. We're going to get a team on this. In the meantime, we need to pull any surveillance footage from the neighborhood. If the truck passed any security cameras, we might be able to get a plate or a logo to track it down. I nodded, already pulling out my phone to contact a few neighbors who had security systems. Karen, looking desperate, turned to me. You have cameras, right? I hesitated. Yeah. Her relief was almost comical. Then maybe we can find the truck, right? Maybe it's just at another impound lot? I shook my head. If it were that simple, we'd already have it back. Karen had no idea how deep this mess really was. And the worst part? We were just getting started.